Well then, that coronal mass ejection impact was certainly a dud. Maybe the next one will be more interesting. We'll talk all about it here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. One thing you may notice on our opening video here is that just to the east of the Earth scale right here, there's a huge plasma filament which is becoming unpredictable. It looks like, once again, a coronal mass ejection occurring as we produce the video. So that's a 24-hour video from the Solar Dynamics Observatory. It depicts ionized helium and ionized iron. We like 304 plus 193 angstroms to show filaments. In other space weather news, a massive sunspot just rose down here in the southeastern limb. If you were hoping for zero sunspots, sorry about that. Not happening for a long time. So here's the southern hemisphere, and again, huge filament, and it looks like it is erupting. There is a distinct possibility that will have an earthly directed component. Fingers crossed for that. Huge prominence down here as well. It's partially a filament and partially a prominence. So here's that currently ejecting plasma filament. Quite a spectacular view, I would say. What about you? Let us know in the comments what you think. And how about that new giant sunspot? Well, it's traveled all the way around the sun. That was, I believe that was 3363. Now it's back. It'll be something like, well, I won't conjecture on what the number will be, but here's the northern hemisphere just for sake of completeness. Crown prominence up there as well. Actually, two of them. And let's talk about the channel. So in any case, thank you for tuning into the videos. We are delighted to have you, and frankly surprised that you've found the channel. I know it sounds crazy, right? It's on, quote, social media, end quote. Anyway, one of the ways we support the channel is via our Amazon storefront. So perhaps help us out and help yourself out with our shopping lists. We've just added some stuff to the spaceware section, so check that out at amazon.com/shop/smashomash. Links below this video in the description, as well as on the homepage to our Amazon lists. So a few different lists available there. Check those out. Some free ebooks available there also. You'll also find the link to another one of our paid affiliates, the Hemp Lucid shop. If you are into CBDs, mushroom gummies, body balms, all those sorts of things, stress stacks, immune system stacks, focus mushroom gummies, sleep mushroom gummies, the Delta 8 products, regular CBD gummies, CBD capsules, etc., hit up our Hemp Lucid shop. Again, links below this video to the Hemp Lucid shop. You'll also find links on the homepage at smashomash.com. Least busted name in news. It's just a fact. And yeah, not busted at all. We have a good faith approach to science on the channel, and there is no agenda except the truth. If you think it's a dig on CNN, it absolutely is a dig on CNN. This design was actually requested by one of our viewers. So we decided to put that one up to help advertise the channel. Of course, it's got the URL to the YouTube channel there. And if you're unable or unwilling to open your cobweb-encrusted wallet, press the like button, press share, press subscribe if you're new to the channel. Do yourself a favor and get the most comprehensive daily space weather and detailed solar imagery you'll find in the known universe. We're not lazy with it. We are. Well, let's talk about the origin of the channel briefly. So, the reason that I cover space weather is because I am a cosmologist. Since the late 1970s, I've been a cosmologist. And the implications of new heliophysics have significant implications on cosmology in that, well, there's a rewriting of cosmology that is about to happen. So that's where I came from. I was expecting in the mid-1990s for people to know a lot more about heliophysics than they did when I took college astronomy. And anyway, I'm back with this very channel. So that's the implications of heliophysics on cosmology are vast, and the implications of new physics on human technology are also vast. So help to support the channel with some merch. Perhaps go out in public and wear yourself a shirt that says Smash News Network, least busted name in news. People will say, what's that? And you can tell them what it is, and they'll look at you funny and suggest that you wear a tinfoil hat or something like that because you're bringing space weather to the mainstream. Shout out to Tamitha Scove, who is also helping bring space weather to the mainstream. And we are funding our nonprofit science foundation with our .com. If you head to smashomash.org, you'll find that you get redirected to smashomash.com because we are in the process of founding a nonprofit 50c3 science foundation. So that's why it's a .com, and welcome to the Neo-Renaissance. It's an exciting time to be doing stuff like space. So here is yesterday plus today. That is our SDO imagery there, the SDO continuum. And there is a very high likelihood of large solar flares, especially from this sunspot group, as well as this group up here. And depending on the magnetic complexity of this new group that just rose down here, that could be an X-class flare player as well. So, but the most likely place is certainly in the southwestern limb right down here. And here's a colorized magnetogram for a brief moment before we take a look at what's going on Croissant Earth. Yeah, Croissant Earth. It's shaped like a croissant. Join the Croissant Earth Society and check out our fabled products and the Red Bubble Shop. So here's what's going on in Iceland. This is the diagram of the new eruption and also the 2022 eruption shown there in sort of a darker orange color. The 2021 eruption showed in a more gold color. So just to give you a diagram there of what the 2023 eruption shown in red looks like, it is indeed flowing to the south, partially covering portions of the 2022 eruption. So that's what's going on at the Reykjanes Peninsula, southwestern Iceland. So that latest lava flow does continue, by the way. So that's the situation there. Mount Mayan is also erupting, producing an unknown size volcanic ash cloud. Semeru producing a 15,000-foot plume of volcanic ash. Dacono, 7,000-foot ash plume as it explodes. Popocatépetl exploding, flight level 190. It's a 19,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico. Not sure about Fuego, volcanic ash not detected in Guatemala. Volcanic ash detected in Peru, though. A 23,000-foot ash plume towers over Sabancaya as it explodes. It's a flight level 230. And an isolated strong puff from Ubinas in Peru rounds out our list. Let's check out what's going on, seismically speaking. There is the past 90 days. In convenient bar graph form. We did have some significant quakes in the west coast of the U.S., including one in the Cascadia Fault Zone. We will cite quakes of a 5 or greater magnitude, starting with this 5.7 at Russia. That was at 16:49 Universal Time yesterday afternoon. Less than a half hour later, a 5.6 struck Eritrea. That 5.6 magnitude quake was at 17:15 Universal Time. Not a super common spot for a quake there, but it is at a plate boundary between the Arabian plate and the African plate. Then a long time of no 5+ magnitude quakes, which ended at a 5.2 early this morning at 0 dark 10 after midnight. That was at India, in the northeastern portion of the Indian Ocean. And then an aftershock of a 5.0. And then later this morning, a 5.7 at Fiji. That was, I believe, the largest quake of the past 24 hours. That was at 1:32 universal time and at extreme depth, nearly 600 kilometers estimated depth for that 5.7 magnitude quake. If that would have happened at the surface, that would have been like a 7 magnitude quake. And let's move back to space, where it's at. Here is some more spectacular imagery for you from SDO. That is our 171 angstroms wavelength, 24-hour video. And you may be able to see why it is the house favorite. That is an aesthetically pleasing wavelength indeed. So here's a quick view of the equatorial region. And we may have to make another video later today to update you on this. We will be doing a live stream this afternoon, by the way. It'll be going on a little bit earlier today. We usually do it at 3 o'clock. Today it's going to go on at like 2 o'clock instead. We'll send out an email alert to the Smash Team at smashomash.com/SmashTeam. And here's the southern hemisphere also. It'll be interesting to see the magnetic complexity of this new rising sunspot group over here. I believe when it set, it did have some opposite polarity umbra there, so. And here's a great close-up of it, as it reappears over the southeastern limb. Next, getting to some space weather stats here. The 10.7 centimeter radio flux is now at 175 solar flux units. And here is a 1-year graph of that to put it in context for you. Radio flux is the black line. Sunspot number is the red line. 30-day sunspot number average. The Wolf number is the pink line. Now, yesterday, you may have heard me say that there's another CME on the way to Earth. It's going to arrive sometime after midday on Friday, August 4th. Did you hear that? Well, it looks like NOAA and NASA didn't hear it because they don't seem to be forecasting it. Okay, there is something there, actually. So there is something on the NOAA site. Here is the NOAA Enlil spiral. So it does look like a minor impact is on the forecast there. All right, I stand corrected. Maybe that wasn't modeled earlier, but now it is. A minor impact there on the 4th is expected. Actually, that looks like a coronal hole high-speed stream. Hang on a minute. All right, what is the spiral showing? What is the spiral showing? No, it looks like a CME impact. So anyway, that's what NOAA shows. And NASA shows nothing yet on that one. So that was the CME that impacted yesterday, and it was pretty weak. It's now subsiding, by the way. Although there was a warning about going into geomagnetic unrest conditions. We'll update that here in a minute. First, back to the Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard, which, by the way, is not forecasting any sort of geomagnetic storm or geomagnetic unrest conditions. We're expecting a minor CME impact on the 4th. So, I mean, we might see a minor storm from that. Could be KP 5 or 6. That's about the best I can tell you. Let's take a look at Earth's magnetic moment from space here for the past 4 hours. Here's our geospace magnetosphere movie. And I believe there was a little ramp up here. It had to do with magnetic field orientation, which we will talk about in a moment. So this depicts magnetohydrodynamic pressure. Again, that is the last 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. Here are the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from the ground level. This depicts nanotesla magnetic flux density as opposed to magnetohydrodynamic pressure. And this one will show you the locations to likely see the aurora, telluric currents, power line, pipeline, and railway induction. Some significant ground-based magnetic perturbations happening here. It's depicting geospace delta B. That's changes to Earth's B field. The B field being the field that goes through the magnet. Some magnetic pulses coming out of the Indian Ocean there, actually. All right, so here's our KP index, currently at 2. KP2 is the geomagnetically calm condition we are at the moment. We did see an alert come out, and we didn't really send any alerts to our Smash Team email server because I don't think it's going to turn into anything. I think it's going to fizzle. So let's look at the real-time solar wind next. And by the way, we have added the KP and AP to the real-time solar wind. We usually only showed 4 panes here. Now we're showing 5 panes. And here's that CME impact. And that was weak. So it looks like it has subsided now with this dip in the plasma temperature. Looks like it's going back to more of a baseline signal there. So we do have a little bit of a significant negative BZ here. But the field is not super strong, and the plasma temperature did drop. So the current solar wind conditions are just under 400 kilometers per second for the solar wind velocity. Solar wind density here at around 7 protons per cubic centimeter. Again, a big drop in the plasma temperature there, as measured by the Discover spacecraft at Lagrangian point 1. GOES magnetometers here, not showing very many spiky readings there at all. It's surprisingly smooth for that coronal mass ejection impact. And let me just take a moment to say that there are some people out there on the internet saying, oh, CME impacts are all going to be stronger now because of the weakening of Earth's magnetic field. Where's that theory? How's that working out for you? Not a very good theory, since all the data does not, 0 of the data backs that up. CME impacts are looking totally normal, and Earth's magnetic field is looking totally fine. Sorry folks, the world's not ending if you were hoping for an apocalypse. It does not seem to be happening. So go outside, get out of your bunker, and make hay while the sun shines. Things are just fine on planet Earth. Let's get back to space. The GOES magnetometers measure the Earth's magnetic field from space. This is Earth-based. Light polarization primarily being viewed here. This is our top view ecliptic plane field plot. And there is a sector boundary crossing coming. Let's see here. And I think it's going to be delayed. So I suspect this South Pole current sheet is not going to be here by tomorrow's video. I think Earth will still be in a North Pole current sheet. That is a forecast based on that sunspot rising in the southeastern limb. We'll have to see what happens. Make sure you tune into tomorrow's daily space weather video to see if I was correct. So here's our line of sight field plot. And no major changes happening there. And that brings us to coronal holes. So here's our coronal hole line of sight plot. Solar B field depicted here in blue. North Pole coronal holes in green, South Pole coronal holes in red. So that's the current situation for coronal holes. And let's bring up our 211 angstroms wavelength, the trusty SDO wavelength, great at showing coronal holes. And there's one opening up right here, so that is a result of that filamentary ejection. Again, another likely CME here, and it could indeed be earthly directed. Great view of a coronal hole opening there in that 24-hour 211 angstroms video. And that coronal hole is of North Pole orientation, I would suspect. Well, there is some South Pole magnetism in there, so not exactly sure on that. That one is not modeled yet. I suspect it's going to be North Pole orientation, but there was some red there. If you look at the... right there, you can see some... whoop, right there, some red showing up. So we'll have to wait on the polarity of that coronal hole for a later time. Maybe tomorrow's video. We'll show a little information about that. So let's take a look at sunspots next. We'll start out with our 1600 plus 1700 angstroms wavelengths. Here we've zoomed in on the equator. Once again, 2 likely spots for large flares. My first choice is this spot down here. Second choice is this spot up here. You can see that sunspot is indeed producing some flaring activity, as you can see that brightening happening there. And let's take a look at, here's SDO continuum once again. That is depicting yesterday, all day yesterday, plus today. So no major changes happening there. The biggest change happening is the rising of this new massive sunspot down here. It'll get a name once again. And let's move on to the flare monitoring page, the flare probability indicator, and so forth. So let's see here. Number 5. Right. So this flare monitor is showing that let me just bring this to the latest image here so it stops moving around. So so the flare monitor largely agrees with me there. Those are indeed the most likely spots based on magnetic shear. Southwestern limb, most likely spot for a large solar flare. Let's get to solar energetic particles and solar flares. Ghost proton flux here remains flatline, so no new spikes in the ghost proton flux. And we've had quite an uptick here in flaring activity in the past 2 days. So a big uptick. There's the 7-day graph. And once again, flaring happening while we produce the video. Several M-class flares in the past 48 hours there. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M-class flares in the past 24 hours. So big uptick in solar activity there. And the background X-ray flux is somewhere around C2.3. So significant uptick. And let's take a look at flares from our favorite flare wavelengths. Here is 131 plus 94 angstroms from SDO. So that is what's going on. And we hope you've emerged from your bunker unafraid of all of this stuff. Let's take a look at what's going on overhead. This is our star chart for Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, where the Smash News Network Least Busted Name of News is located. And there is the sun in the constellation of Cancer. Saturn setting over there around the western ecliptic. Jupiter is high in the sky at the moment. And if you're viewing the early evening sky, you'll be able to see Venus there, very low in the sky. Also, Mars and Mercury, perhaps visible there, if you're viewing just after sunset. Next, your solar system forecast. Hey, Smash Team, this is where things are today. We hope you enjoyed your full moon. Here's where things will be in 1 week on August 9th. And let's take a look at the astronomy picture of the day. I think you'll be impressed. Check this out. Yowzers. That is pretty sweet. So these are the galactic winds of massive radio galaxy M81. It's considered a starburst galaxy. And these winds, this material here, that is gaseous hydrogen, that is the collective output of many, many massive and active stars on that galactic disk. So it doesn't have bright X-ray producing jets, but it does have a bright X-ray producing galactic disk. This is a common feature that we see. When we see bright X-rays coming out of the galactic jets, we tend to see a dim disk. And when we see a bright disk, we tend to see dim jets. So that's the close-up imagery, and let's zoom out. There you go. The Galaxy M81. A bright disk and dim jets. These jets here, these are the collective output of the stars in the galaxy. So that is like cosmic ray flux to the max, especially in areas like in here. You would have very high cosmic ray flux in those locations, as many stars have aligned to create those jets. That's the astronomy picture of the day from apod.nasa.gov. By the way, I'm sorry, I said M81. It's actually M82. M82, the starburst galaxy. So that is pretty sweet. And by the way, this bright object here, this is a local star in the Milky Way galaxy. Most of the rest of those things are actually galaxies. Moving right along to our coronagraph imagery. So we'll start out with the George Mason University. So yesterday early in the day, here are yesterday's images. Yesterday early in the day, there was a halo eruption. That will be the CME, likely to arrive on August 4th, Friday, sometime afternoon time. Sometime afternoon universal time is what I mean there. You can see that halo right at the beginning of that. So that'll be another minor impact. Maybe something like a KP5 or 6 will be possible. Once again, it's dependent on the magnetic field strength and orientation. Something that is, at the moment, pretty much impossible to model without further data. So there is yesterday's CME, again headed this way, likely to arrive sometime after midday universal time on Friday, August 4th. Here are today's frames. There's an additional 32 frames. And those additional CMEs there do not appear to be earthly directed. Let's take a look at Soho Lasco C2 and C3 in hopes that they have updated. Again, it looks like that CME is indeed on its way out. So do we see? Indeed, check it out. Right at the end of this, there's another halo. So that is likely another earthly directed coronal mass ejection. You can expect that one to arrive sometime late in the day on the 5th. So 2 more CMEs. Like I said, it's an exciting time for things like space weather. We do have some more custom images here. We'll also show stereo A. I don't think it's going to show that. Unfortunately, it's only showing the very beginning of that halo coming out there. And I suspect that our custom videos are not going to show that either. So here's a 24-hour video. Not really going to show that. Although you can see this filament starting to become unstable there and starting the ejection process. It shows up well in 193 angstroms. You can also see that coronal hole opening, creating a little bit of a void there in the sun's atmosphere as that plasma filament is now partially headed toward Earth. So how you like them apples? More CME forecasts. It's exciting stuff. Exciting times for space weather in general. And hey, Elon. Great rebranding of X, by the way. Just brilliant rebranding there. Pardon my sarcasm. Are you watching the channel yet? Hopefully you won't lose millions of dollars worth of Starlink satellites by launching into a geomagnetic storm. Anyway, next looking at filaments, and there goes that filament. Somebody should have named it, although nobody did, because, well, nobody sees our tweets because of censorship on all social media platforms. If you're a free speech purist, you would probably agree with me that censorship has not ended at all, and we just think it's hilarious that people are paying to have some of their posts shadow banned on Twitter. Those of you who have blue check marks and complain about shadow bans, what are you doing? Why would you pay a monthly fee to have your tweets deboosted? It's ridiculous. Highly recommend naming this filament. That could be the next one that's headed our way. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. We do read all comments here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. And by the way, again, if you want to name filaments after living people, join us over on X. X, the formerly known as Twitter platform. Brilliantly, just ace rebranding there, bud. Ace rebranding. It's now been rebranded to a letter. Great idea. Everything is X. SpaceX, ScopeX, AIX, everything XXX. It's just, it's got the aesthetics of used cigarette butts in an old ashtray. Follow the hashtag #NameThatFilament if you want to name that filament. Here's how you do it. You bring up the latest image, you press copy, and then you come over here onto X, and then you X. You go to X, and then you just say, and you tell us which filament, and then we put an arrow on it or something, editing the image, and we name the filament after living humans, not fictional humans, not named in the YouTube comments, not non-existent people, but named after living people. Because filaments are very lively, so it just makes sense to name them after living humans, right? You can also follow us on Instagram. You'll see things like, most days, you'll see things like daily fitness and lifestyle posts and diet things and stuff like that. Sometimes fitness advice. We want to talk about cross-training has been one of the latest things. And let's take a look at some of the latest images. So there's the GOES 16 now. No, it's back to the GOES 16 now. The GOES 16 SUVI. And you can see that filament indeed on its way out, on its way to Earth. So the 4th and the 5th, you can expect to see CME impacts from coronal mass ejections on both of those days. Sometime after midday on the 4th and sometime later in the day after midday also on the 5th. That brings us to our bonus feature segment, by the way. And if you haven't pressed like and subscribe, take a moment to do so. Also, press the share button. Leave us a comment, even a derogatory one. We challenge you to attempt to hurt my feelings. It's not going to happen. So, we do have some charging hazards here for satellites. There are some minor surface charging hazards in the East Pacific. Those surface charging hazards are caused by low-energy electrons, which will build up on the outside of the spacecraft. Probably not going to cause any major communications breakdowns. Here is the GOES electron flux for the past 3 days. And it did dip down there, but it didn't get quite as low as we expected it to, because that CME impact, again, was a dud yesterday. Here's the 1-year graph of the electron flux. To put it in context, that is the relativistic electrons as measured by the GOES 16 and GOES 18 from their geosynchronous orbits using radiography. They're measuring that electron flux at the F layer of the ionosphere, one slice of the atmosphere. And here's the forecast model. And you can see we were off even farther than NOAA was with our forecast, because that CME impact was so weak. If you thought Earth's magnetic field was breaking down, well, it looks just fine. And the geologic record agrees with me, if you're wondering. Again, that's measured at the F layer of the ionosphere, so we're going to show the vibrational frequency of that. This next imagery is courtesy of Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology, the vibrational frequency of the bridge between Earth and space. So we'll have a lot less red on this, a lot less low-frequency anomaly than we may have expected, than we did expect, because, again, the CME impact was such a dud. And here's the anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. We thought this would be lit up with red after the CME impact, but again, it was such a weak impact that there's only a little bit of red there. It was a lot weaker than perhaps expected. And we're almost to the total electron content forecast. Here's the latest image for the ionosphere, 11:15 Universal Time in megahertz. and 11:15 universal time, an anomaly in megahertz from the 30-day median. Again, total electron content is depicting free electrons to about 12,500 miles of altitude. And here is the total electron content forecast. Some significant anomalies here, once again, around the South Polar region. Also south of Oceania, south of the Indian Ocean, and south of Africa. Those are the most likely places to see GPS errors, as signals are refracted by free electrons in the plasmaspheres, ionosphere, and the Van Allen belts. Now, significant anomalies here over North America. So, is it possible a big earthquake is coming to the Cascadia fault zone? Well, maybe it is. We are seeing major electron content anomalies here over Vancouver once again. So right in here at the beginning, you see a large high electron content anomaly that could be generated from some Earth-based signal. Also some significant high electron content anomalies over southern Mexico and eastern Canada, actually. So there are those high electron content anomalies. And let's take a look at the latest images of the closest star. And thanks for stargazing with us, by the way. Here at the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. We do appreciate that. So here's the latest magnetogram and the latest intensitygram. Here's this new old sunspot. And I think we have a new group that just formed down here. I don't think that one's named yet, so there's at least 2 new sunspot groups coming in the next 24 to 36 hours. That one at the moment looks like it's only alpha class. Here's the full disk. Oh, maybe those have names. I don't know. I don't try to memorize these things. Which brings me to an Einstein quote. Never memorize something you can look up. There is finite space in your brain, folks. So just realize that, and it's time for our meteorology segment. So once again, we're starting out today by looking at dust. Yeah, dust from the Sahara. So check it out. There is some significant Saharan dust here showing up in the Atlantic Ocean, tamping down tropical systems. So if you were praying for hurricanes, sorry, this little low up here is sucking dust into it. You can see dust being pulled toward that. A great example of how low pressure systems suck and high pressure systems blow. It's not vulgar in any way. It's just a fact. Lots of Saharan dust there in the North Atlantic. Anyway, let's switch to our regularly scheduled meteorology segment. Here are the surface winds of the eastern world. Powerful typhoon there in between Japan and Taiwan will be the main point of interest there. Here's the jet stream scenario. Jet stream blowing backwards over the western Pacific and the northern Indian Ocean. Here are the jet streams of the central world. Here are the surface winds of the central world. Surface winds of the Americas. And like sands through the hourglass of time, these are the jet streams of our lives. Anticyclone has now moved over Louisiana. That is an upper-level high-pressure dome featuring the telltale sign of an anticyclone, a clockwise rotation for the northern hemisphere. Moving right along to our pressure map. There's a sweet pressure map from windy.com. There is some low pressure there over Kansas. That is the mean sea level pressure for planet Earth. Next, clouds and fog for the Americas as we zoom in closer and closer to the lower 48. We put your space weather and Earth weather together. And that is clouds and fog depicted by shortwave radiation on the NASA GOES Interactive Weather Satellite Suite. Rapid cloud nucleation happening there over Iowa and Nebraska and into Missouri. Anyway, here's your smoke map from firesmoke.ca. It's getting some thick smoke here in Idaho, also Oregon, Northern California, parts of Washington, parts of Michigan, also in the smoke forecast there. And let's take a look at weather.gov to see what the warnings are for the U.S. We got some high heat warnings as well as some flooding statements. If your location is lit up, click your location. I'm not going over all those counties. Maybe this afternoon we'll go over every single weather warning. What do you think? All right, so here come some forecasts. We're starting out with the GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation forecast. And another round of severe weather is expected to move across Nebraska, spiking most of the state there. Nebraska going to get kaplastered, according to that GFS 72-hour forecast. So here is your total accumulated precipitation forecast. We brought that up today since there is some flooding in the forecast. And yeah, Nebraska is expected to get flooded. Also parts of Alabama, Missouri, Illinois, Iowa, Tennessee, and Kentucky. Expecting some significant rains there, more than 2 inches coming to a lot of those areas. 72-hour total accumulated precipitation forecast in inches is what that is. How about the GFS 72-hour temperature anomaly forecast? It's been quite cool in Pennsylvania as Canadian air has been making its way down here. It's crisp, it's clear, it's not smoky. 72-hour GFS temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. Next, your lightning mapper. Look at the severe thunderstorm there, suddenly forming over southern Iowa near the Iowa-Missouri border, and then making its way southeast into Illinois and so forth. Let's check and see what's going on currently. Some severe weather there. A long line of storms there all the way from Lincoln to St. Louis. And there's a lot of lightning strikes there south of Sioux City. That appears to be the most active cell. Could be accompanied by damaging wind and hail there. The possibility of things like tornadic activity would lie in a system like that. And guess who wouldn't lie? Me. I don't have an agenda. My agenda is the truth. So if you enjoy the content here at the Smash News Network, Least Busted Name and News, why not check out other videos on our playlists? You know, we put out content that has nothing to do with space weather or earth weather, like driving, riding, and pro tips, do one thing, and more. So check out our other types of content. If you haven't seen our shorts, check those out. They've been wildly successful. They have raised our views like, I don't know, 70,000 views a month or something like that. So that's called progress. And thanks to our new subscribers, by the way. Again, we are surprised, frankly, that you've found the channel. So please press that share button, comment, etc. You know the routine, right? As we approach 4,000 subscribers and act like that's some kind of a milestone on YouTube. By the way, if you want to support the content and if you want additional content, we have created our own subscription services site at smashomash.com/smashteam. We realized that we had to do that back in about 2020, I think, is when we really realized that Patreon does not really offer all that we need. Smashomash.com/smashteam. Join at the gold level, especially. That is where you'll get the most additional content, and the best value would be the gold annual paid-up subscription, thanks to our gold annual paid-up subscribers. And it does include complimentary merch, so it's almost like getting 4 months of a gold membership for free. Here's an example of the merch that you would get. The Smash Team design only available to gold level Smash Team members. And by the way, folks, remember, I wouldn't endorse anything that I don't use myself. I'm not only Smash-O-Mash, but I am also a client. And welcome to the Neo Renaissance. It's exciting times. So here are these insane storms. And yowzers, those are berserk. Dag! So lots of red on the map there. As that system interacts with a bunch of cold massive air driving its way down into the southern U.S. So we'll briefly show the full 50 state view, and then we'll focus on the lower 48 view, and then we will close this thing out to get it onto your screens. There is U.S. Doppler radar. Here is clouds and fog, and look at the rapid cloud nucleation. Blow! That is fast action right there. Water coming out of the ground, making its way into the air, and then making its way back onto the ground promptly. It was picked up. It was dropped back down. And if you think humans are capable of doing that, think again. Oh, man. Maybe if you detonated a nuke in Lake Michigan, you'd be able to do that. So here's your recap. U.S. Doppler radar. Not governed by weather modification, chemtrails, contrails, HARP, or any other nonsense like that. It's governed by natural forces like the jet stream and pressure gradients. Here is clouds and fog. The shortwave radiation map. And here is water vapor. So that is where we'll have to end this video. Thanks for tuning into the Smash News Network, least busted name in news. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back. I'm going back to the bunker again.